Hello and welcome to Painting with Tanya. Today this beautiful girl looking out somewhere onto something is going to be our project, and we're going to call this project Who's That Girl? So if you'll join me, get your supplies together or save this video and watch it later. If you like this video, please subscribe and like. So today we're going to use our gator board. This is just a piece of corrugated plastic. It comes in large sheets that I purchased at hardware store, and I cut down to smaller sizes, so if I'm doing multiple projects, then I have enough gator board to leave my projects attached while they're drying. We're going to use a nice hot press paper today. This is a Fabriano 25% cotton, 140 pound. This is a 9x12. The hot press paper is a smoother paper. So just for reference, the higher the cotton count or percentage, the higher quality the paper. So this is a good beginner grade, good student grade. And I enjoy it quite often, and I do use it a lot. This is a drafter's tape. Also, these products that I'm going to be using today are mostly available through Amazon. The brushes, my brushes, I like to try them out, kind of test the weight on the handles and different things. And so some of our brushes today that we're going to be using, they came from Hobby Lobby, because I do like to kind of look at the brush and I like the quality they have. We have a flat brush. This is a number 16. This is also a flat brush, number 10. And this one is a number 2. It's it's a smaller script brush, the bristles are smaller. Sometimes watercolor brushes have a little bit longer bristles at the end. Then I've got a pencil. I've got my water, and I have my dish towel to the side so that when I rinse off my brushes, I have something to kind of wipe it on, so I don't bring too much paper in. Too much water into my paper. I have a spray bottle. This is for activating your paints on your palette. And then if you also want to have some paper towels, it's not a bad idea to have some paper towels available. My palette is full here, and I can just go through here, wipe it off, and have a fresh palette to start working on today. And there are some instances where you do want to have you can use the paint that's already on your palette. So there's a good reason for either one of those, whatever one you prefer. So our project today is going to be Who's That Girl? And I started with a sketch that I worked from, and I used a marker so you could see everything that's going to be, we're going to work on in our painting today, that we're going to incorporate. And then, just because that's the way I like to do it, and this is on watercolor paper, then I copied it. I made a copy of the sketch, and I'm going to transfer my image onto my watercolor paper that I've prepared onto my gator board. And how you do that is a couple of different ways. You can freehand sketch onto your paper. You can transfer carbon paper, put the carbon paper down, lay your sketch on top, and then trace around the edges to transfer your image onto the paper. One way I like to transfer images is through a pencil. And you just take this is my copy here, and you can see I scribbled all over the back of this, and I have put graphite onto my image. I'm going to center it where I think I might like this. And then I'm going to transfer over, and I'm going to use my mechanical pencil. And then I'm just going to trace the lines that are on my sketch. And this is going to transfer our image. And I'm going a little fast, so you want to go a little bit slower than me. This is like watching paint dry. I'm really sorry, but this is really the best way for you to understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Is for you actually to see this process. And I'm concentrating on the main outline of my sketch. If there were a lot of details in my sketch that I'm working off of, I wouldn't necessarily want to transfer every detail. For example, this scarf that is in our project today, maybe it has some flowers on it, but I'm not going to transfer every single flower over. And I'm going to make this scarf, I'm going to adjust my sketch. I'm going to make that scarf just a little bit smaller than what my sketch has. And then what was copied. Whoops, I pressed too hard. So we're almost done. And then you can lift up to see if there's anything. Oh, I didn't put the waistline in here, so I'm just going to add that. And then just look back through to make sure you didn't leave anything. And there we go. And it is difficult to see on camera, I realize that. But the image is there, and our image looks just like this. All right, so we're gonna get our paints ready. So I'm gonna set this aside for a moment, and I'm gonna just make sure I did put water there. I'm gonna put a little bit more water that's onto this flat part inside my palette in the well so that I can mix some. I'm going to start at the top. I'm just gonna, and I've decided already ahead of time that the hair, this is the hair portion right here. I'll show you on the sketch. This is the hair portion, and this is the face portion right here. So I've already decided in my head, who's that girl is gonna have brown hair. So you can decide if yours is gonna have blonde hair or black hair, you know, maybe she's gonna have purple hair, I don't know. So you decide what you wanna do on yours. And I'm gonna start with our hat, and I'm gonna work my way down. The colors today that we're going to use are Winsor Newton, the Cotman line, and there are some colors that I have to intermingle from the professional line because they're not available as a student in the Cotman line. So today we're going to work primarily with the lemon yellow because that's the color of the dress of my girl. Yellow ochre will be part of the hat. Potter's pink will be part of the scarf. Raw sienna also for the hat. The raw umber, Van Dyke brown, and burnt umber are going to be the colors for hair. And then the skin, there's a special way that the skin tone is created because there's not really a tube of paint for skin color. So you have to, work on the side and try to create the right color tone that you want for your person. So you decide that. But today we're going to work on Caucasian skin. So I'm going to start with my yellow ochre right here. yellow ochre. So I do have a lot of paint on my palette, and you know, after you paint for a while, you'll be able to recognize the colors, and because it's your palette, you know where the colors are, and you'll just go immediately to that. But one thing that I have off camera that you don't see is a chart. I have a chart that I have made just like my palette, so that I can, you know, make sure that I'm making a note what color I use if I'm, you know, working on a book or another special project. So I do have that noted on the side. All right, so I got my yellow ochre out, and I'm going to put just a little bit of raw sienna on here. Raw sienna is going to be this color right here. I'm going to put some of this out as well. And then I'm going to kind of mix those two a little bit, and it changes the tone. So I'm going to use a little bit of each one of my little puddles that I've got here. And I'm going to be mindful for my hat of my brush strokes. I'm going to be thinking about how I place the paint, how I turn my brush. And if you'll notice on our hat, I decided that my bands were going to be straight in this direction. The top is a little bit darker. Maybe the light is hitting here. There are little areas where I have darker places on. So that's where I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to work my way down. And you can always come back. You can always come back and add if it's not quite the tone that you were looking for. So the top, I'm not going to worry so much at this moment, but I am going to get some color down, and then I'll probably come back. I do like using a flat brush for this project, and I like the way the color spreads. So, all right. Okay, we got that's a nice first coat. Pick up a little bit. This is just going to be the darker color, and I'm going to just come in here, and then I'm going to just rinse that off, and I'm going to come back, pick up a little bit of light, and I'm going to be working mindful. We want all of our brush strokes. Brush strokes are just as important as choosing the color, choosing subject matter, and especially in watercolor. All right, so now I just rinsed my brush. I'm taking the color off, and now I'm just going to come in with some water. I have a little bit too much water. And I'm going to come in with some water, and I'm just going to create a different color. So you'll notice right here, there's very little color, but there's color next to it, and it's a little bit darker. So I am creating the illusion that there's light coming down and casting maybe reflections. So I'm getting a good, nice streamline brush stroke. I'm just going around the edge with my brush straight up and down, and then I'm just going to grab it and I'm going to pull it across, just like that. And there's a little bit more paint in this section right here than it was in this one area. You know, the light was on there. Yeah, we're not exactly sure what happened with that, but we're just gonna let this sit for a moment. I'm gonna rinse. All right. So now I'm gonna put a coat, a rough coat of paint on my dress. So I'm gonna come in here. This is my lemon yellow. I'm just gonna put some up here. And the brush strokes for this section, I'm gonna press press and lift, press, lift. They're going to be different because this is fabric. This is a dress, and this is a very flowing fabric here. So there's going to be some areas that are going to be dark. There's going to be some areas that are light. You know, I'm just going to kind of come in here and touch, press, lift. You know, I might want to pick up some of that yellow ochre and just put in some folds in my fabric to make it look like there's shadows. Not too much, just a little bit. And then you could also, you know, bring your brush stroke like this. But we want to make it interesting because this is fabric. And some of this section will not be, it will not be in our finished project because we'll have a mat. Hopefully you will have a mat. To me, your art needs to be, it needs to be finished and ready to hang. And it's more, you're more likely to go ahead and display your art instead of sticking it in a drawer somewhere if it's in a mat. And I think mats are really important as an artist if you're going to practice and work on projects. Then being able to have some mats available. I usually go on Amazon again and I'll buy a whole box. So, you know, if there's something I like, I maybe like it a lot. Maybe I want to give it to someone. It's really nice to put it in a presentation, and that is a mat. So, and then you can always get it framed later. So, all right, I'm going to pick up some of that mixed color. You know, and it could be too that the dress is picking up some of the highlights, some of the coloring, you know, from the hat. It could be a reflection from something in the nearby environment around the person with the dress. And, you know, we're just kind of creating some interest here. All right, I'm just going to smooth that out. So you can, on my project today, since I am painting it for a video, but I skipped this part, but I want you to know that that my pencil lines are dark because I want you to see them. But if I were painting this to give this as a present or hang this on my wall, I'm gonna want to use a kneadable eraser like this, and I'm gonna wanna tone down my pencil marks so that they don't show through when I put my paint down. So that's just something, that's just a little tip that you pick up as you're an artist and you're painting, and over time you just add and add, and that's how professional artists become professional artists, because you're constantly honing your skills, your painting techniques, you're learning new things to make your art, to make it have the personality that that represents your artist style. All right, so I've got this, and I'm just gonna let this sit. This up here is dry, so we can probably work in this area right here. So this, I think, is gonna be a little bit lighter. Maybe it's darker, you know, because it is under. So this is your project. You can decide which way you want to go. So also be mindful of your brush strokes. Using, if you have this size flat brush, and you're able to get these results with this brush, that's great. If you have a smaller brush, your results, your brush strokes may show a little bit more, but that's okay too. There's no right or wrong way when you're creating your art. I like to say that no one will paint like you. Just like no one has your fingerprint, no one else has a fingerprint like yours. No one else can paint like you. So you determine what your artwork looks like. And I like that it's a little bit lighter on that side. But it still blends because we're using you know, I dipped into that paint and that I had on my palette. You know, it's a little bit of yellow ochre, and I pulled it in. So we're using tones that are close. So I'm gonna let this dry a little bit. And I did touch into here, so that maybe it's gonna need a little bit more time to dry because I touched into that. So now I'm gonna go into my yellow and I'm gonna try to work on the body of my dress here. So this area, it's more smooth fabric, so maybe you're not gonna have to worry about shading and shadows of folded fabric, but maybe just underneath this scarf area, maybe we'll put some highlights in that area. And there we go. Oop. Did you see what I did? Oh my. Okay, so I just painted yellow paint onto the arm of my Who's That Girl. So I lifted it up. I have clear water on my brush, and I'm just trying to lift that paint out. That could happen to you. So we'll put the skin tone on in a moment, but I'm going to stay away from that area now if I can. So now I'm putting the rest of the color of the dress on. So it's kind of light. You can pick up more pigment on your brush. And we're going to put a belt on whenever we're done. When we get down to that part. But this is lemon yellow. You know, another color that would work really well for this is Naples yellow. I like that color too. So I just picked yellow today. There's, you know, there's no reason really, but it's cheerful to me. I like that. So really for this project, you know, you could do purple, you could do blue, you could do red, you know, the girl with the red dress. So got a little heavy right here. I'm just gonna lift that out. I rinsed off my brush, and I just had water on there, so I just lifted that color out. So you can kind of see, like I went a little heavy right here in this area with straight pigment right out of my well. And then over here, I used a lot more water. And so the color is a little bit lighter. So I can do some additions like that. And maybe the light is shining on the fabric or something. You know, and just kind of touch it up, because texture, you know, using watercolor paint, the illusion of texture is created with your brush strokes. It's created with the shading, the lighting, the highlighting, the backlighting, the underpainting. You know, there's so many techniques that watercolor artists use to create depth in their painting and make it look more professional. All right, so that is wet. We don't want to mess with that right now. So the sections that we have remaining to paint, the arms, scarf, the face, and the hair. So let's work on the hair. Let's try to figure out what kind of hair we're gonna have. And I like to keep a piece of watercolor paper on the side so that I can mix colors. And I'm gonna kind of show you, you know, what are some of the things that watercolor artists know, because they are, you know, of course, been doing this for a while and they've learned tips and tricks. So one thing I like to do is start with a darker color. So I'm just gonna pretend like we're doing hair here. Okay, so this color is Paynes gray, And Paynes gray is really, you know, it's a gray, but it's really dark. And it's a good base color. So the next color that I'm going to tap into is my Van Dyke brown. So we're just going to, it's a little bit too much. Let me see. Okay, so I've got some Van Dyke brown here. I've got that gray underneath. Okay, and I'm going to tap into my, let's see what other color, my burnt umber. Let me get some water over there. Okay, Van Dyke brown, burnt umber. It's a little bit more earthy. This color is a little bit more earthy. So I'm kind of adding that in. Okay, I'm gonna rinse out. And then I'm gonna pick up raw umber. Raw umber is a little bit lighter. It too is an earthy color. So instead of just having hair that is one color, okay? So in this particular swatch, I have got hair that has the Paynes gray that we used as an undercolor. We also used the raw umber, the Van Dyke brown, and the burnt umber, okay? So, I mean, you can see, look at the depth that's in there. Okay, and it adds highlights and character instead of just using one color of watercolor paint. So let's go back to our project. And I'm just rinsing my brush out and I'm drying it off. I want to make sure I have a pretty good dry brush. And because we did put water in our wells over here, so we're gonna practice, or not practice, I'm sorry, we're gonna pull some of this paint over to here. That color is raw umber right here. This color is Van Dyke brown. I want you to see. And then burnt umber. So this is a really good example of how you can see those colors. They're browns, right? But look how different each one of those browns are. They each have a character and personality for that color brown. Okay, so now I'm just going to just tap into my Paynes gray. And this is the hair area right here. So I have some on there. This is a very small space, so you have to be really careful with your brush. So I'm gonna go around the edges. I'm gonna pull this down. This is our underpainting for the browns that we're gonna have. So it's gonna be right next to the scarf. And then we're gonna let that set. So I think our dress has come along pretty good. And we're gonna look at painting, starting to put a coat down on our very nice scarf here. So I chose the pink in my watercolor palette is called Potter's Pink. It is one of my favorite colors. I use it because it imitates nature. So in my mind, this looks more like a color of a flower that you would see if you were in the garden somewhere. Now these other colors are very nice. There is nothing wrong with this color right here. So you pick which, if you want to have your scarf a different color and you prefer this shade, absolutely fine. So I'm going to come in here, and I notice I have some water right here, so I'm going to be careful. I'm not gonna want to put any pigment in that area because it can kind of pull it down. So I have a little edge on this scarf, so I'm gonna try to keep that paint inside that area there. But it is folded and the wind's blowing. I can already tell it's at wherever she's at. So maybe the edge is not so straight, right? So then I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna tuck some color in here. And I probably could use this brush right here. Use my small brush just to make sure I stay in the lines. It is kind of small though, so if you prefer to use your larger one, you can do that too. I just wanted you to see your options. Okay, I'm getting carried away there. All right, there we go. Okay, we're gonna let that one sit for a minute. I am gonna clean this up. It's a little thick right there. Okay, so there we go. We're gonna put together our puddle for the skin tone. So remember I told you that skin tone is one of those items that you have to mix. In order to get the right skin tone for a Caucasian person, there is a little trick. And I know, I mean, you look at my palette, I have all these different colors. You mean to tell me you can't get that on there? This is really my favorite way. Now, there are different artists who use different techniques to do this, but this is mine, and so I'm going to share this. I'm going to use this lemon yellow. This is cadmium red. Okay, so you have to mix these two shades together first, just like this. And then you have to come in with white paint. And that is how you get skin tone. So you want to make enough skin tone paint to do the arms and part of her face. So we're going to come in and also be mindful of our brush strokes. And we want to kind of make it a little interesting. Our skin can reflect light. Some places are darker than others. So you can duplicate that in your color and be mindful of your brush strokes because of the type of painting that we're doing today. Because it is so simple, the details really stand out more in a project like this. So over here, maybe she had some dirt on her arm. I don't know what happened over there, but it'll be fine. So you don't want it, too blotchy, but at the same time you want to create some interest. So you'll use your own artistic abilities. I am very confident that you'll make the right choice and the colors that you choose and how you present it onto the paper. And then plus with us having the white background that we've got, it really makes that skin tone pop. So I'm going to come in here and put skin tone on her face because she's looking at something. We just don't know what she's looking at, right? Okay, be a little bit more careful than I was. I got a little carried away right there. So be a little bit more careful with your brush. So now we've got our arms, we've got our dress. We got one coat of paint on our hat. We haven't gone back to that one yet. And we haven't gone back to her hair. So I'm gonna go work on our scarf. So I've got the paint here, and this time I'm gonna put a little bit more water in there. And I want to show you how this is the same color paint, but because I've watered it down, it's going to show up as a different color for us. So I'm going to be gingerly going around the edge there. And I don't want to get anything on her hat. I'm going to try to stay in my lines. I'm using my brush vertically. Okay, and then you can also, I mean, I'm calling it a blotch, but you know, it's more like just the color is like different. It looks different, and the fold of the fabric is, it plays tricks with your eyes. So it's not just like a flat color, because that's just not how it is in the real world. And so we want to make our paintings very similar as well, even though we do create art so that the person that's looking at our art can figure things out on their own, right? We don't want to divulge every single thing, and like the person that's looking at your art they don't know what they're doing, right? Because they do. We're just going to give them little nudges, like, oh yeah, this is what this is right here, like that. And I'm just picking up some color, the thicker color over here, and I'm just going on the side. You know, maybe it's like a little darker right there. So, and it's going to be a little darker right there too. Okay, I like that. And you can always touch that back up too. So, but for now, we're just gonna let this ride. So our dress is finished. So I feel like I'm gonna go ahead and pick up some of this brown that we had over here, some of this pink, maybe. And I'm gonna make a little belt. Yeah, maybe it's a decorative belt. And I just picked up a little bit of that pink. I'm gonna make it a little bit wider. Just, you know, it's not perfectly straight. That's okay. All right. So now I'm gonna come in here and work on our hair. So we've got our 3 browns. I'm gonna pick up on this one. And I'm just gonna vertical. I'm doing lines. I'm just doing lines. Then I'm gonna pick up some of this brown, and I'm gonna leave some of that gray, that Paynes gray in the background. Then I'm gonna come in there. So these are different colors of hair. Nobody's hair is all the same. You ask a hairstylist. I've always heard hairstylists know if somebody colors their own hair, because they just take the bottle and they dump it on their hair, the whole bottle, on every single strand of hair. And nobody's hair is all the same color. So we're gonna try to duplicate that in our art. All right, I'm gonna pick up some of the dark because it's starting to mingle. I'm just gonna put some little things in here, just like that. All right, so there we go. And I think I need maybe another coat in here. I need a little bit there. Okay. All right. She's looking very nice, like this. Yeah, I like that. It's very good. Yeah. So up here on my hat, I'm gonna work on this little space just a little tiny bit. This is that yellow ochre. I don't want too much water. I just want to smooth out. I had a little rough area right there. So I'm just gonna smooth it out just a little bit. Okay, I like that. I like how that came out. And then right here, yeah, it's just a little, looks like a little, starting to be a back run right there. Okay, and I could tap in just to get a tiny bit of brown onto the edge of my brush. And for this painting, how we were speaking earlier about how you want to try to be a little bit more careful when you're erasing, after you do your sketch, before you start painting, you know, try to work on erasing some of the lines, make them lighter. Maybe not completely erasing them, but just make them lighter. So I'm just taking a little bit, just a little bit of paint, and I'm just tapping it around the edge. And it kind of covers up, does a couple of things. It is covering up my pencil marks, but it's also creating definition. So it's just very subtle, very light. All right, so there we go. So let me see my work on this just a little bit right here. Wipe this off. And pick some up right here. This Potter's Pink, I love it. This is one of my favorite pink colors because you can do so much with it. Okay. Yeah, I kind of like that. I'm gonna put a little tiny bit right there. Okay, that's great. We have a finished painting right here. So I think we should sign our painting. Please share your painting with me in the comments, and if you have any questions, please let me know. It was a joy painting with you today, and I hope to see you again really soon.